All right.
Hey everybody, we're going to start the event here. Thanks y'all for coming out, or if you're accidentally here, thank you for accidentally being here. My name is Ryan Harvey. I'm from Baltimore, and I am an organizer. I'm an East Coast organizer with the Bradley Manning Support Network, as well as being a part of an organization called the Civilian Soldier Alliance. We're a group that started around 2006, and since then we've been working with anti-war veterans and political voices within the military and folks who have already been in the military, specifically in the post 9/11 era. And for one, because it's my generation of young people, it was my high school class, you know, people went into the wars and stuff. My neighbor, my babysitter, was killed in Iraq in 2006, my childhood babysitter. And there's just a lot of things that tie us to these situations, right? So yeah, that's what brings me here. And we are preparing right now for, so Bradley Manning has been in jail for over 3 years now. He was in solitary confinement for about a year before that, and he's been essentially in solitary confinement given the fact that he hasn't been allowed to say a single word to the public. And he's pled guilty to releasing all of these documents to WikiLeaks, these secret documents and stuff like that. And his trial begins on June 3rd, so we're having a really big demonstration on June 1st down at Fort Meade in Maryland. And that's part of why we're having the event tonight, is because there's a bus coming actually from Syracuse full of people coming down, and they're going to drive through Harrisburg, and so there's like seats left on that bus if anybody wants to get on that bus. You have a ride to Fort Meade and a ride back. No excuses. There's buses coming from New York. There's 2 buses from New York, buses from Philadelphia, Baltimore, DC, Syracuse, people coming from all over the country to be there. And a bunch of people are going to be speaking there. Daniel Ellsberg is going to be speaking there. He was known, you know, for leaking the Pentagon Papers during the Vietnam War. We had him speaking last week at an event in Baltimore through Skype. And someone asked him what was the difference between him and Bradley Manning, and what was the difference in his treatment. And he said, well, what I leaked was highly classified. What Bradley Manning leaked was only classified. So what he did was actually like more illegal, but he was allowed to do interviews with the media, and he didn't see any real prison time. And he was doing interviews, and he said that because I was able to tell my story, I was able to get public support. People got to know me, they got to understand me. Bradley Manning's been kept completely isolated from everybody, from the public, specifically, strategically, so that his person doesn't get known by people. Because they might feel human sympathy and be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. You were seeing all this really messed up stuff, you wanted people to know about it, you know? And we had an event 2 nights ago in DC, and this Iraq veteran was speaking. And he was he gave briefings to generals, right? That was his job in the army in Iraq. So he would sit before generals, up to the highest ranking generals, and tell them what happened in that week, that time period, whatever. And he said there was days, like there was a day where 150 people were killed by U.S. forces during a demonstration that they said had turned violent. U.S. soldiers killed 150 people. They found 3 AK-47s among the dead, and so they labeled everyone there as an enemy. As a whatever word they were using at the time, anti-Iraqi forces or whatever, terrorists, whatever, and that was it. And it was just paperwork. And he just gave this briefing to the general. And so when people talk about, well, why didn't Bradley Manning keep it in the chain of command? Why didn't he just go through the lead? It's like he did. He tried to, and he's testified to that. You wouldn't know about it because they don't let him talk to anybody. But somebody secretly recorded an hour and 7 minutes of Bradley Manning speaking at Fort Meade a few months ago and released it. And in that, you hear this. You hear about him going and talking to his command and saying, hey, like, these Iraqi journalists and activists keep getting kidnapped by the police on false charges and being accused of printing, for instance, they were printing what was called anti-Iraqi literature. What anti-Iraqi means is as confusing to me as it is to you, but you can imagine anti-American means something, so anti-Iraqi must mean something too, right? And it carries the same weight. So they were accused of anti-Iraqi literature. So Bradley Manning was an intel analyst, so he was responsible for looking into this. And they were basically like, you know, keep an eye on this, you know, find out why these people were printing anti-Iraqi literature, find out who they have ties to, what terrorist groups they're part of. And he looked into it, and he found the thing that they were printing, and he sent it to the translator. And then he went to the translator's office, and the translator was like, oh yeah, this is pretty much just a document being critical of the president of Iraq for corruption. And he was like, oh, that's kind of messed up. like, that doesn't sound anti-Iraqi to me. It sounds like the president of Iraq, Maliki, is stealing a bunch of money, which he is, and embezzling it and giving it to his friends and family, and people were being critical of it because they're actually fighting for a better future in Iraq. And then they're being arrested. And Bradley Manning tried to report that multiple times, even complained to other analysts about it. And that was one of the things that made him flip. And it came out more recently in The Guardian, out of the UK, did a long investigation. And they found what pretty much points to the same wing of the Iraqi state, the Iraqi security forces, police and military. This wing of it that was probably responsible for these arrests and abductions of these Iraqis for anti-Iraqi literature were trained, not just trained by Americans, they were trained by a special team of Americans who were sent there specifically to train them because they had good experience training similar forces in Central America in the 80s, the 70s.
Remember that.
Yeah. Some of you in the room will remember the disappearances and the abuse of political activists and journalists then. So they were like, oh yeah, they did good work down there. We should send them to Iraq to democratize them. So that's the situation. Eventually Bradley Manning decides he's going to take all of this information. He gets all this information. He's trying to figure out where to go with it. He tries the Washington Post, he tries the New York Times, and he's ignored by both of them. And he realizes, okay, no media is going to take me seriously, no one's going to handle this. So he turns to WikiLeaks, which at the time was an unknown organization, except to some people in like the intel hacking world. And the rest is history. We remember everything that WikiLeaks leaked. So, so I'm gonna, the other hat that I wear is that I'm a political folk musician. And the two go very well together. So I'm gonna do that, and then my friend Casey's gonna give a quick legal update about Bradley Manning, because there's a development just 2 days ago in the case. And then I'm gonna bring up two really special guests, both veterans, who are going to speak about their experiences, and I'll introduce them as the time comes. So thank you all for hosting us here. This is an amazing space. Yeah. After sanding floors all day, you'd think I would be tired of looking at wood, but this is impressive stuff here. So I'm going to sing y'all a couple of songs real quick. I wrote about the Iraq War and the whole situation of it, every side of it, you know. The young activists like myself who were out blockading the cities and towns that were from the day that the Iraq War started. We had the largest street demonstration in Towson, Maryland's history, unpermitted that is. And, you know, folks shut down San Francisco for 3 days. Folks shut down every bridge leading into Portland, Oregon. It was the first time in contemporary Egyptian history, until January 25th, 2011, that people had occupied Tahrir Square, the day that the Iraq War started. It's about that, it's about that, it's about the soldier, the veteran, it's about the insurgent, it's about the Iraqis trapped in the middle of all of that. And it's called Old Story because it's all too familiar to anyone who's lived through it before. So many lives, the occupier, the occupied, the soldier, the insurgent, most stuck between the lines. We tried to block the cities, we tried to block the ports, strategic desperation, we did what we could, Lord, it was my generation, lined up to get on board, the train of false promises to be part of the war, oh, but it's an old story. And then they were soldiers, focused and confused, overworked and underslept, honored and accused, propped up and pinned down by a shared mythology of country and family and gender identity. Ah, but it's an old story. Oh, it's all been done before. Well, in search of something larger, in search of something just, abused and abandoned,
by the men who won their trust, now struggling to reason with a purpose undefined. A generation amputated in body and mind. Oh, but it's an old story. Oh, it's all been done before. Well, it's an old story. Well, it's far too many know. So many lives, the occupier and the occupied, the soldier, the insurgent, and those stuck between the lines. We people, how they struggled to keep the numbers up. Strategic desperation, that's how the war was fought. With your bodies and your bombs, you counted down the days as your deadly and deadly surprises mark the way. Ah, but it's an old story. And they tried to break you with 1,000 tricks, try to pit you against one another in violence. And I wouldn't say you lost, but I wouldn't say you won. You just struggled through the hard days and tried to enjoy some. Ah, but it's an old story. Oh, it's all been done before. Now the best that we can work for in times like these is a just and peaceful future for your family. To find space for healing, to find space to mourn, to find space for dreaming so you can move on up. It's an old story. Oh, it's all been done before. Well, it's an old story. Well, it's far too many know.
Thanks, Rob. One of the lines in that song has a lot of the lines in that song have a context. But for some reason I was just thinking about this. It says they tried to break you. And it's talking about the Iraqi insurgency or resistance, depending who you're talking about. But there's a lot of different organizations in Iraq, many. And very unfortunately, they were all just categorized as one thing in the Western press. Just terrorism or insurgents or whatever. Regardless of if it was a popular neighborhood assembly that was resisting forced eviction by U.S. soldiers who wanted to create a little base in their neighborhood and clear everybody out so they had a place to put a wall around to sit in. You know, like the WikiLeaks helicopter video, a lot of us have seen this, right? The context of that video, there's 3 veterans from the unit on the ground that spoke out after that happened. One of them is going to be in June 1st in Fort Meade supporting Bradley Manning. His name's Ethan McCord. He's a soldier in that video who rescues the children from the van and was later called a pussy for it by his commanding officer. And various other things that are even more offensive than that, that I could talk about. And he was eventually, after suffering 3 IED attacks on his vehicle, once when he was on the ground, received traumatic brain injury, had a broken spine, had one of his vertebrae was shattered. They said it was muscular. He went to a civilian and got an x-ray, a civilian doctor, and he said, oh, your spine's broken. So after all of this, he started to vocally complain about his treatment, and he started to seek mental health. And he was what they call being chaptered out. He was kicked out of the military for having a pre-existing personality disorder. He has a post-traumatic stress disorder, he has traumatic brain injury, and he was wounded in combat. But he had a pre-existing personality disorder, which somebody suggested the other night might have been a conscience. That might be the disorder. So I think Bradley Manning probably had that too. Bradley Manning's also somebody who they said, oh, well, he has a personality disorder because he's queer. He must have a personality disorder because he raised his voice about things that were wrong. But at the beginning of during the siege of Fallujah in 2004, the first siege of Fallujah, there was an attempt by folks actually from eastern Baghdad, from what became known as the Mahdi Army, the largest insurgent group in Iraq. Not an organization I support the politics of, for note, but they tried to get to Fallujah to support the resistance in Fallujah. Now Fallujah is a majority Sunni city. The resistance there was led by Sunnis, not Shia. And they were trying to unite, and there was documents sent, and I don't think they were leaked by WikiLeaks, they might have been though. But it was specifically saying, like, we can't let these two groups combine forces. We have to keep them separated. That was a strategy by the US to foster, not necessarily purposely, but inevitably to foster tension between different groups of people in Iraq. They were trying to combine. I'm going to sing a song about some of the 511,000 US soldiers during the Vietnam War who had the same pre-existing personality disorder. These 511,000 soldiers were some of those who deserted the US military during the Vietnam War. And just to point out that it is indeed an old story, and that's not even that old. I'm going to sing this song about one of those soldiers. Maybe I should sing a song about sabotage. Yeah, I'll sing this song later. Same war, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and but instead this song is about some of the US soldiers and sailors and Marines who sabotaged their own aircraft carriers in the early 70s as the US switched to an air war. All this stuff is true, and there might even be a book in here about it. But yeah. And I don't normally support littering in the ocean, but if it's soldiers driving their own equipment into the ocean to destroy it, we can figure out the other part later. The immediate is good, so this is about that.
Gather around your sailors, soldiers and Marines. I'll tell you about some sailors making history. The world's strongest navy was delivering the bombs from the hills of California to the swamps of Vietnam. The USS Ranger was heading off the war, didn't make it too far, barely left the shore. A little paint scraper in the main reduction gears, and it couldn't do much but sit right there. All hands on deck, let's give 3 cheers to the man who threw the wrench in the gear. I like to tell groups of active duty military personnel that it's not always a wrench that does the trick. Sometimes, like they found out during Vietnam, a paint scraper will do the trick. So will a bolt. Anything you can put in the gear, doesn't have to be a wrench. It's good to know if you're ever in such a situation. And I think I can technically be arrested for saying that. Where was I? What ship were we on? The USS Forrestal was heading off to war, didn't make it too far, barely left the shore. Fire to the radar in the middle of the night, fire to the admiral's quarters, he ain't gonna fight. All hands on deck, let's give 3 cheers to the man who threw the wrench in the gear. Then the USS Anderson was heading off to war, didn't make it too far, barely left the shore. Bolts and chains in the main reduction gears, and it couldn't do much but sit right there. All hands on deck, let's give 3 cheers to the man who threw the wrench in the gears. Well, the world's strongest navy's got a little glitch. It needs obedient sailors flipping every switch. They set the country's future on to fight a greedy war, so they took all their equipment and threw it overboard. All hands on deck, let's give 3 cheers to the man who threw the wrench in the gears.
So I have a few songs I'll sing later. After this song, I'm going to bring up. Maybe should I bring it up now or after? We'll do something after this. But I have a new song about Bradley Manning, but I'm going to sing it later. But I want to sing this song now because we're about to hear some stories that are like real stories from people who experience them. And when we were talking about how we were going to structure this event and stuff, like one of the things we were talking about is like this is real stuff, and we wanted to hit people he wanted to hit home, you know? And so, what these two folks are going to talk about, there's going to be some heavy stuff in there, I'm sure. And this is a song about that kind of thing, and about the lifelong, the war that doesn't end inside of people. Ironically, today is a day where our president made another of his famous empty rhetoric speeches about things that he hasn't done yet, that he campaigned on twice. Lovely. It's like, well, you better hurry up. If that was ever the intention, which I don't think it was, I don't know at what point in the political process people become that corrupted, but it clearly happened. It's like they can't necessarily prove what energy looks like, but they know it's there. It's like that, you know. I don't actually know where it happens, but it's clear. If somebody can prove me wrong, please, I would love it. But so this was written on another day when Obama made a brilliant empty rhetoric speech, and it was the day that the Iraq War was declared over, and it was declared to be a profound moment. That's what Obama said. It was a profound moment. First off, Obama didn't end the Iraq War. From one perspective, because the Iraq War is not necessarily over, depending on how you judge what's considered war. On the other hand, because the strategy that led to that declaration was a George Bush strategy. It was George Bush's strategy. They wanted to get out. It was becoming costly. It was becoming like what it looked like to us, like a total freaking, I don't want to say a mistake, because there was no mistake about it. They just thought they were going to win sooner. They didn't think people were going to be that angry. I don't know why they thought that, but they clearly did. Someone did, or they just wanted to get the money. And then they were like, all right, close shop. Halliburton's good. They've relocated their corporate headquarters to the United Arab Emirates, and they're making a lot of money now, so it's all good. Job's done. Finish the job. That was Bush's thing. So anyways, Obama says it's a profound moment. And most of the lyrics of this song were from an article that a friend of mine wrote, somebody else who's part of this Civilian Soldier Alliance with me. And her boyfriend is an Iraq veteran. He's an anti-war activist. And they're sitting in the VA hospital in southern Illinois. And he's going there to get his post-traumatic stress disorder checkup, get his bottle of pills, maybe extra strength ibuprofen, which seems to be the VA's favorite thing to give people. Oh, you just need some, that's like what I take when I have a headache, you know? They give this to people for post-traumatic stress disorder. So they're in there, and the VA is just filled with people, mostly older folks, older veterans from other eras and other wars. And the clarity experienced in that room of the never-endingness of war was very present, right? And talking about wars as things that begin and end is strange, because war is like a collection of loss, right? And if you have a friend die, no one says like, oh, is that over yet? No, of course, it doesn't end. It's lost, it doesn't end, you live with it. And so this is a song that she wrote about that experience, and it's called Toss and Turn. I turned it into a song from her essay. And for any of you punk rockers out there, the last line is by Oz Rap. Just to keep Pennsylvania relevant in the song, you know? So this is called Toss and Turn.
Well, it must have looked a hero in the eyes of many men, the forgotten souls of broken generations, and shared nods and smiles and spoke of other times that held a grim silence that was recognized. Well, the invisibly wounded, they too walk these halls. They're trapped in these appointments and the memories and pills. And long after the war is over and the country stops paying attention, it stays with those for whom it never ended. And there's nothing profound about it at all. Well, it's a pain and a wreckage. It's things that can't be undone with symptoms on checklist of trauma. It's a loss that is mourned, it's a loss with no one left but mourn. It's another night that he can't sleep, he just tosses and turns, and there's nothing bad about it at all. Well, I've seen the heart in distance, the coldness and the fear, alongside the tenderness, the love, the hope and care. Well, I've wrestled with events that are more than mere events, dig deep holes of despair that you can lose yourself in, and there's nothing found about it at all. There's nothing found about it at all. They must have looked a hero in the eyes of many men, forgotten souls of broken generations. But once their war was over, a new one had just begun. Oh, modern day is just the same, no war has ever won, and there's nothing found about it at all. There's nothing found about it at all. Sing one hopeful song before the... Got it right, John? Yeah, okay. We're going to do this hopeful song real quick. Actually, I need to get another tape on that. So this song I wrote recently, and I was reading this book by a woman named Rebecca Solman, who's a friend of mine, and it's called Hope in the Dark. And she talks about a lot of things in that book, but one of the things she's talking about, you know, keeping hope alive when things are really shitty. Which, if you read history, they always are. They always have been. There's been worse moments, sure, but... Like when people always would say George Bush was the worst president ever, then you read about other US presidents and you're like, oh, there's been evil people running this country. Andrew Jackson? George Bush didn't compare to Andrew Jackson. Or this. Or Leatherface. Obama is like the Iraq War's Richard Nixon. Isn't that unfortunate?
Oh, God. I have to leave now. Sorry. That's terrible. Never seen
song was talking about this idea of the margins of society, the margins of whatever topic. And you know, people often say like, well, you know, those protesters, for instance, their voices are marginal. Or people say, oh, well, what you're saying is very like marginalizing. You know, and you should be aware of that, obviously, if you're trying to reach people. But at the same time, as she points out in this book, social change always starts at the margins. And it works inward, exactly. It moves its way to the center. That's how it starts. Civil rights movement was marginal at one point, you know. Underground Railroad was probably marginal at one point too, even among some of its participants. And these things, yes, they start at the margins, and you don't want to get stuck there. You're not gravitating. You should assess it. But so I wrote this song about that, but I was thinking about Egypt and the Egyptian Revolution. And I went to Egypt this summer. I went to Cairo and I hung out there with these revolutionaries, with these young people who just overthrew their government 2 years ago. And I just learned a lot from them, and 2011 kind of rocked the world, you know. It kind of, you know, it didn't like magically change everything, because that's not how change works, but it presented possibilities where a lot of people before had not seen any, or like me, had stopped seeing any. And from the stuff in Wisconsin, to the stuff in Tunisia and Egypt, the stuff in Spain, in Chile, and then in New York, and then all over the US, and then in Quebec, all these places, it was just like, okay, cool, I'm in. Things can happen. So this is a song about that. And I want to mention that because I think Bradley Manning, from his prison cell, was very much part of all those movements.
Dreamers have to prove that the idea grows from small seeds and starts and then spreads to the hearts of many people from the isolated edges. Well, it starts at the margins, but then moves to the center. First they'll ignore it, then they'll laugh, then they'll attack. Not because you have arrived, but because they know you're on the path. With great determination come the soldiers and police to push you from your spaces and keep you off the streets. Cause it starts at the margins, then it moves to the center. It starts at the margins, then it moves to the center. But that time can just move by with great expenses, disillusionment and loss, desperation and depression. But it can sometimes lead to moments when the old world shakes and the exposed possibilities give a sense of what it takes. So it starts at the margins, but then it moves to the center. It starts at the margins, but then it moves to the center. As we move towards the horizon, it'll keep moving back. That's why it's there, that's how we know we're on the path. Or you can take the lives and freedom of the willing ones, but you can't evict an idea whose time has come. Cause it starts at the margins, but then it moves to the center. It starts at the margins, but then it moves to the center. Okay, thanks very much, everybody. And again, my name is Ryan, and I'm the MC performer today. So, I want to introduce, are you all ready? All right. I'm going to introduce our two speakers tonight. And first off is Kyle Quigley. He's an Iraq combat veteran, lives here in Harrisburg. A buddy of mine, we've worked together for a couple of years. And Kyle was in Iraq in 05 and 06, yeah? Yes. He was a cavalry scout, and he's going to be talking about that. He's a member of Iraq Veterans Against the War. And Heather Linebaugh, who's also local here, who I just met tonight, is going to be speaking. And she's a former drone analyst and was in the Air Force and was essentially deployed in both Iraq and Afghanistan at any given point from remote locations. That's how the program works. And this is her first time speaking about this publicly tonight. And it's actually the first time I have ever heard of somebody from the drone program speaking out from the enlisted portion of it. So while listening and afterwards, recognize and appreciate like what it takes for people to come up and tell these stories. And it can be part of the healing process. It can also open things. So be mindful but also like listen and take it in. This experience is incalculably valuable as people. And yeah, when I asked if folks would be interested in speaking at events supporting Bradley Manning, both these folks were interested and contacted me and wanted to be involved, and they thought that telling their own stories was as much about supporting Bradley Manning as just talking about Bradley Manning. And I'm sure that Bradley would agree that the more truth that's revealed and the more people that are speaking out and talking at least openly, if not critically, about their experiences in the military are of immense value to us all as well as to themselves. So yeah, Kyle Quigley and Heather Linebaugh.
My name's Kyle Quigley. I'm a local from the area. Joined the Army in 2004. Deployed to Iraq in 2005 with the 1st Airborne Division as a Cavalry Scout. And I guess we're just going to tell you a bunch of different things that went on through my whole 3 years in the Army. I just remembered a story about while I was in basic training the other day, a drill sergeant of ours. This speaks more to like the dehumanizing of the enemy. We were at a target range where they would pop 3 targets up at you at once really fast, and one of them would be armed, and that's the one that you're supposed to shoot at, and the other 2 would be like a woman and a little kid or something. So you're supposed to, targets pop up, you're supposed to shoot the armed target, and then they drop back down. So we were doing that, and then one of our drill sergeants walks over, and all 3 targets popped up. So he just shoots all 3 of them. And then he's like, "That kid is just a future terrorist." And I don't know if he was joking or not, but I think that's kind of irrelevant because there's a lot of young kids in basic who that's going to sink in, and that's the kind of stuff they're going to bring over with them.
I have a little bit to say about that myself. Okay, so with that, white blue drones, predators and reapers, and they carry bombs that they bomb people with. They kill people with them, and it's very real. It's not a video game. We would oftentimes be doing missions, and we would be actively flying, following someone who we considered a terrorist. That's relative, and so we would be flying missions, and we would oftentimes see a family. We would be looking for the adult male who was considered to be someone of suspicion, someone who had been committing nefarious activities in recent days or weeks. And a lot of times we would have people that were flying with us who would say, "Who cares, just take them on." And we had an abbreviation for that. And they would call them TITs, terrorists in training. And it's very real, and there's people in the military like that. They're the ones that stand up for life, and they're the ones who enjoy it. And that's just a little snippet of how they dehumanize people, because these are children. It doesn't matter where they're from, it doesn't matter what country they're living in. They're in a war zone not by choice, and they are children, and people are calling them terrorists. It happens all the time.
I guess I'll go into interrogations a little bit. When I got to Samara, our platoon was in charge of running, we call it the BIF, which is the Battalion Interrogation Facility, which was just like these 4 tiny little cells that they would round up, sometimes as much as like 80 people, and just cram them all into these 4 little cells. So our platoon was in charge of just watching these people at night, like getting them food and water and letting them go to the bathroom and stuff. So then military intelligence would come down and just randomly interrogate people. I got to sit in on a few interrogations in the beginning. Eventually our company commander decided he didn't want us sitting in on interrogations anymore because that wasn't our job. We were just like scouts and infantry, we were just there to watch the people. So I'd go into a room and there would be 4 of us in there counting the person getting interrogated. There'd be a military intelligence guy running the whole thing, and then we'd have the guy getting interrogated who'd usually be like zip cuffed to a chair or something. We'd have a big spotlight shining in his face so that he couldn't see anything. He would just see like shadows and stuff. And then we'd have the interpreter, and then they just decided to bring me in one day. They saw me sitting around, and they're like, "Oh, you're a pretty big, scary-looking guy. Like, why don't you come in and help us out with our interrogations?" So they would just give me like a club or a big paddle or something, and they'd be like, "We just want you to like make lots of noise and hit things and run around behind the guy, and just like when it gets intense, when we're like screaming in his face, just like come over and kick stuff or like get in his face and yell at him and like hit stuff." So this was like right when I first showed up, so I was kind of excited that I was getting to do stuff. I thought we were dealing with like real combatants, and I was like, "Oh, cool, I'm finally gonna get to do stuff." But so I'm in there and I hear everything that goes on because they have to do it through the interpreter. So I hear like the entire interview translated through this guy. And I'd find like person after person after person, like it's just like a farmer or something that they didn't do anything. They're just rounding these people up off the streets trying to get intel. And they'd sit there and just scream with them and tell them how they're going to disappear and never see their families again for the rest of their lives unless they give them information. And basically, just screaming at them, trying to scare them. That was the kind of stuff that made me start to, I don't know, rethink everything about the whole situation. I really hated Gift Guard. It was, we'd be there on 12-hour shifts all night long. So I would like volunteer for missions to get out of Gift Guard. I'd be like, I'd rather go out the gate and risk getting blown up than have to sit here and like deal with this stuff all night. And I'll come back to tell some more stories about Gift Guard later, but I just wanted to talk about the interrogations.
I guess I want to say something about, this is a little bit to do with Bradley Manning. I was actually in there, of course, when Bradley Manning was, all this fracas erupted with Bradley Manning. And I was in for 2 years at that point. And I thought, I did join with the intention of killing terrorists. So I was thinking that he was a bad guy and that he committed treason, and I knew what he released because that was my job. I knew all those things already. So when that happened, we were like, oh, he just told all of our secrets. This is not good. So when that first happened, I mean, I was obviously a victim of the dehumanization. I didn't see them as human beings for a long time. And when we saw what happened with WikiLeaks and everything, there's not very many people that were like, oh my God, yeah, that's good. I'm glad someone did that in the intel field because we like to keep it hush-hush. But one of the things that really struck me is like whenever they saw that video and everything of the Baghdad incident with Ethan McCord and everything, when everyone saw the videos that were linked to that with his unit and everything, and people saw that, and some people were very appalled, some people were like, that's okay, that happens all the time. And one of the things that came out about that was a lot of people got in arguments about it at work. I mean, we didn't fully understand like why they made such a big deal of it, because we were used to hearing about stuff like that, and it's terrible. And one of the things that is very difficult is that when a troop is dealing with something like that in the drone field as well, if you ask for help, a lot of times, I personally walked down to my first sergeant one time after a very awful mission, and I said, I can't do this. Can you please put me on day shop, which was basically just pushing paperwork for the squadron. And I said, can I please do something else? I was also seeing a psychologist at the time for symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, and the first sergeant said, you know, you gotta deal with it. Sometimes there's collateral damage. And that really hit me. That's not just one isolated incident. When people ask for help in this career field with intel, as Bradley Manning did, he tried to use his chain of command, people do, and it's not like we're running around the chain of command not paying attention to rules. We're trained to use our chain of command, but the chain of command will let you down. And that is one of the reasons that I decided that I was not okay with this, because you are serving your country, but your country's not going to serve you. They don't care what you think about killing families, killing people's fathers, killing people's children. And that's one of the things that needs to be pointed out, I feel, about that, because he is like, Bradley Manning's one person that really did something about it, but for every Bradley Manning, there's hundreds of people in the military right now, and people that have just resulted to committing suicide, or resulted to just heal myself with alcohol, because they are not allowed to ask for help. And when they do, they're treated like freaks. They're told, "Get the sand out of your vagina." And it's very graphic, the way that they treat people for asking for help. So that's something to think about with that.
I guess I'll talk a little more about how the people in charge deal with that kind of stuff. Is this good? All right, I'll talk about a mission we did in Samara once. I was lead machine gunner on that mission. So when you're lead machine gunner, you have a little more to do. You're constantly like trying to get people out of the way. And a lot of times they'll tell you to just like open fire for crowd control. Like if there's cars in the way, they'll tell you to like shoot at the cars to get the cars to move out of the way. We were in Samara. Samara is where the Tigris River is. So we're coming around the bend or the blind spot. So you can't see any traffic at all coming until right around the corner. So right as I'm coming around the corner, there's this guy driving, we used to call them bongo trucks. They're these little trucks. And he's going way too fast. So he's like swerving right into our area of operation. Gets way too close to the convoy. So there's an escalation of force, but when that kind of stuff happens and they're that close, they tell you to just forget about escalation of force and just escalate to the last part of it. And so I wasn't even thinking about it at all. I just reacted. I just pulled my M4 up, take the safety off, look at the red dot, put the red dot on the guy's face, and I'm like starting to pull the trigger, ready to shoot this guy in the head. And this only happened within like a few seconds, but it's like time slowed down. It seemed like it was going on for like 10 minutes. And I saw the guy's face through the scope when he realized what was finally going on. And he just like freaked out and cut the wheel and drove off into a ditch. So I stopped at the last second from like shooting this guy. And like we look in and both of his two little kids are in the car. You know, he wasn't doing anything except driving too fast. You know, and if it would have went on for a split second longer, I probably would have shot him in the head. And but how my unit reacted to that, they're like, you know, you need to stop being such a faggot. Like you should have shot that Haji. Like stop being such a pussy and start shooting more. You know, just because a guy was driving a little too fast, the guy would have been completely in the right according to our rules of engagement for shooting this guy. They probably would have told me I did a good job or something. So for not shooting this guy in the head in front of his kids, they're like, why didn't you stop being a faggot? You should have shot that Haji. And that made me think a lot about like what the Army was doing to me. Because while it was going on, I wasn't thinking anything. I was just reacting. I was just like, okay, put the scope on his head, start pulling the trigger. That really made me question a lot, like, what the fuck am I doing here? That's it.
Actually, I thought this would be fun. I got a little copy of some rules of engagement. And one of the things I'd like to point out is that armed civilians will be engaged only in self-defense. That's funny because we fly drones miles off the ground and there's no one in them. So when we were flying these drones, we would be in support of Marine units on the ground or Army units on the ground. And if someone was taking fire at some point in time, someone there may have been I can't get too much into detail, I'm sure you guys understand, but there would be an attack earlier in the day on a base in Afghanistan. So we would be sent to do surveillance and find the guy. Well, the combatant wouldn't be armed anymore, and that's also a legal combatant has to be armed. If it's someone who is carrying a weapon at 7 o'clock in the morning and now it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, if they're not carrying a weapon, they're not a legal combatant. So we would be sent to go find these people, find who is associated with it, and we would be told if you see them, we're going to. So when you're given mission orders like that, you have to think about how are these programs even part of the rules of engagement. They don't necessarily have like a specific set rules of engagement for them. So when we were using these missions, it was a new thing, and it's Obama's baby. He loves it. He loves the drones. So when I was in and we were first starting all this, some of the like first missions that were really kinetic were just complete disasters. Because we would be given these missions and you're told, you know, we're following ROEs. ROEs changed in 2010, 2011. ROEs changed like every 5 minutes. We were given different orders on who to kill and who not to kill, who we were allowed to kill. At one point, trees were considered collateral damage. A tree. If you blew up a tree in the process of finding someone that was bad, you were in trouble. So some of the things like that were completely disorganized. We didn't have purpose to what we were doing most of the time. And that was a fallback on the enlisted. Everybody would blame the enlisted. And a lot of that was officers not knowing what they're doing, not asking what to do. And enlisted would take the fall for that because the blood that is on your hands isn't, the officers don't care. The people that were running the missions genuinely usually didn't care. And the people with the blood on their hands is the enlisted. And they're the ones that feel the loss of taking a life. And they're the ones who have to live with the fact that maybe they could have done more to save someone's life. Because not only did we see bombs being dropped on people, but we also witnessed convoys getting blown up. I witnessed a Marine unit that I was working with. Their fuel tanker hit an IED on the side of the road. And I got to see the truck burst into flames and watch them be dragged out of the truck and die on the side of the road. And that's not fair war.
I guess I'll talk about throwing rocks at kids, and that sounds really bad. A lot of people look at you like, oh, you're kind of an asshole who throws rocks at kids. Because I did do it a lot, and my reasoning behind throwing rocks was these kids would rush the convoy. They'd ask you for like food or water or something or whatever. They just try to grab stuff off the trucks. So I'd have like a lieutenant or a sergeant or something sitting down in the truck telling me like, don't let those kids near our convoy, like shoot at them if you have to or something. Like, do whatever you have to do to keep them from getting towards the convoy. So my way of throwing rocks at them was to keep them away so that I didn't have to shoot at them because the guy in my truck was telling me to shoot at them. I didn't do it for fun or anything like some other people in my unit did. Some people got a kick out of it. They fill up piss bottles and throw piss bottles out the truck and then watch the kids think it was water and pick it up and take it and drink out. So that kind of stuff, throwing rocks at kids, it's the kind of stuff that you end up having to do so that you don't have to shoot them. I can talk about Bithgard again, the interrogation facility. When we wanted to like really mess with somebody bad that we didn't want to get in trouble doing ourselves, we would just call the IPs up, which is the Iraqi police. And like IPs are even shadier than IAs. Like IAs is Iraqi army. They're like somewhat legit, but then Iraqi police show up wearing like ski masks over their faces. So if people think of like a police force, they don't picture like guys in ragtag uniforms with like ski masks over their faces. So like they would show up and we'd do like, you know, that guy, and they would just take that guy away, and he might disappear for like a day, 2 days, 3 days, and then they'd bring him back and just like throw him in our cell. And you know, one guy they brought back was like the worst that I've ever seen anyone beat in my entire life. Like he would just lay there on the floor, you know, and like we would bring the medics come down to look at him, and we told him specifically, we were like, you have to send a male medic down because this guy's, his testicles are all messed up. He was kept pointing to them and complaining about them. So I don't know if it was just incompetence or if they thought it would be funny or something. So they send down a female medic, of course. So she's there like looking at his testicles, and they were all enlarged and black and like looked like they were going to fall off or something. And she's like, I don't even know what to do. Like you have to, this guy needs to go to a hospital or something. Like we can't treat him here. So, you know, we would turn people over to Iraqi police. They would just beat the shit out of them and then bring them back to us. Then maybe they'd talk a little more, maybe they wouldn't.
Another thing with the drones is a lot of times we're given these missions to follow people for quite some time, and like I mentioned earlier, we would be given a mission to follow someone. We had a running joke all the time that we got the #2 guy in Al-Qaeda every 2 weeks. It's funny. It was, we would always, oh, we got him, because we'd be given these people that we were supposed to go after that we thought were participating in building IEDs, bringing weapons in from other countries, growing opium. So we would have these individuals that we would have to look for and follow, and a lot of times you get so confused in like the madness that is following someone like that, because it's not like you can just walk up and find them. You're flying around looking for them. So one of the things that needs to be said about the drone program is that it's incredibly inaccurate. You're saving one pilot from possibly getting shot down by a missile, but what are we doing in this war? Mostly ground warfare, guerrilla warfare. And one of the things that really always like bothered me when I was starting to doubt, like, why am I even doing this, was we would follow people for days, and then some mystical general somewhere would be like, hey, bomb them. So we would have to do a strike. And a lot of times, like, there was so much confusion that we would be like, well, we hope we got the right guy. We hope that that was the right guy. And for a lot of people, it didn't matter because they're the enemy. They're not someone that you know. You don't know them. You don't care. But a lot of times when we would see people, we wouldn't just drop the bomb and jet. We'd drop the bomb and then we'd have to stay to assess what we saw. And to confirm the person was dead, we would call it counting the body parts. And we would watch and be like, there's an arm, there's his torso, there's the cigarette he was smoking. Like, watch and see what happened to that person. So, and when you drop a bomb on someone, it's a little graphic. It blows people up. And not only does it just hit that one person, but if they're in a group of like bad guys together, it'll take out maybe one person, but the bombs really aren't that epic, so they will blow up the one person and give the other people internal bleeding. Or, because if anybody knows anything about bombs, if you're standing within the blast radius of any sort, you're going to get, all your organs are just going to jolt, and you're going to bleed to death internally. And there was a lot of people, a lot of the times, I mean, they were hopefully considered bad guys. We were always kind of, oh, I hope that was a bad guy. They don't just die any kind of humane death whatsoever. It's very gruesome. And when you drop a bomb, you're lucky if you take out one person real short and quick. But the rest of the people in that group will probably be running, because right before the bomb hits, it breaks the sound barrier. So they hear it. They look up. You can see them looking up. And then they know it's coming, so they start running. Well, when they start running, they're just barely going to outrun a bomb that's going to land on them in less than a second. So they start running. And one thing that really stuck out to me that I didn't even register that it was real until like later that morning, because I work nights because it's daytime in Afghanistan, it's nighttime here. And registered to me that next morning was after we saw this guy. We dropped the bomb on this guy and some of his buddies, and he ran, but his legs were broken and he was bleeding. And when he ran, you could see the thermal signature. He was leaving a path of blood behind him. He was bleeding to death. But because of the adrenaline that you get when you get bombed, you think, oh my God, I have to get away. Something just dropped a bomb on me. They don't know what it is. They don't know that we were even watching them. They don't know anything. They don't even know what they did wrong sometimes. Because what's the difference between a gun and a shovel whenever you're 4 miles up in the air? So one of the things that really hit me, and I still remember it to this day, is seeing that guy running. He ran for like a good quarter mile, half a mile, and just fell down. And we kept watching because we were like, oh, is he still alive? Like, holy shit. And one of the things that happened then was someone, I mean, obviously when you drop a bomb, people in the compounds, that's what we call the places of living in Afghanistan, because it's compound doesn't sound like home. So we would watch, and this family came from near this compound, and they were like, oh God, it happened again, because it happens all the time over there. So they go and they get a blanket, and they put him on the blanket, and they have to carry him home and bury him. And they're obviously mourning, and you watch them take him to this place of burial, and you see them bury someone that they knew, someone that they loved. And for us, we see that all the time, and we saw that all the time. And it's very real. And one of the things is that you didn't just, it's not like a video game, we don't get points. We're taking lives, and we see these people dying, and we watch after they die as well. And to see things like that, it's very, it really brings you to a place where you're really knowing that you did that, and you took part in that. And whether that person was good or bad, I'm cursed with that conscience disease. And whether that person is good or bad, you know that that's another human life. So the thing that you have to think about with these drones and everything is like a lot of people look at it, oh, they're just robots, but they're robots, and they are taking people's lives, and there are people sitting behind those robots that are making the robots move. This artificial intelligence has to have an operator. We're not that smart.
I guess I'll tell you guys about a friend of mine who got stuck on KP duty, and that's like kitchen duty, which is the absolute worst thing that you can ever get stuck on. Like, I had to do it a few times. They have a rotation for all the lower enlisted guys to do it. But it's more given out as like a punishment for people. So I saw a friend of mine who was on KP duty every single day, so I went over and talked to him. I was like, what's up? What did you do? Thinking he got in trouble or something. And this was a guy who loved the Army. Like, he was like, oh, I'm getting to do 20 years. This is awesome. I love this stuff. That was the last time I saw him when we were on guard duty. He got together. So he tells me the last time he was out on a mission, he was machine gunner, and they pulled up to this vehicle that had like a family in it or something, and they wanted him to shoot up the vehicle. I don't really know why. And he refused to do it. He was like, I'm not going to do it. So they're basically like, okay, you're not in our company anymore. They just kicked him out of the entire company, and they're like, you're going to do KP duty for the entire rest of our deployment. And I just saw him like mentally just deteriorate. KP duty, it's not good for you psychologically. People do it once in a while, and he did this 7 days a week for almost an entire year. Like 18-hour shifts that give you just enough time when the kitchen closes to go in and go to sleep, and then get back up and start doing it again. And you can see it definitely took a toll on him mentally. And for what? He didn't even do anything to get in trouble except for not following orders of shooting up a car full of innocent people.
Very vague story to tell, for obvious reasons. There was one time, one mission that I remember in particular. I was kind of like head honcho of that mission. I got promoted pretty quickly because I had the good luck / bad luck. Every time I started a mission, we'd kill someone. So my nickname was Harbinger of Death for a while because of just how lucky I was. And we would set the missions and everything, and we were following this family one time, and we would work in like operations with other people, other drones. We fly a lot of drones at one time. It's very expensive, and that's a whole other economic thing, but they're a waste of money as well. But we would fly drones like buddy missions with other drones, and sometimes you get in the mass confusion there is collateral damage, and it's obvious. I mean, we all read about it. It's in the newspapers all the time. So we were doing one mission one night, and when we dropped our bomb, we knew the people where we saw them. We were very cautious because I was working on missions, so we made sure that we knew who we were killing. However, the other team didn't either care as much or didn't know anything. I don't know how. I mean, they say intel, but sometimes you question that definition for the military. But we found out that in the fracas of that bombing, that apparently somewhere along the way, possibly maybe a child had been killed. And in the confusion, everyone's looking for someone to blame immediately. So because my group was the first ones to drop a bomb, they assumed it was us. And we found out later that there was no child killed. But in the confusion that was in that time span, it seems like eternity, but it's really only like 20 minutes. We were told, you killed a kid. And when that happened, the guy that I was working with, he was relatively new. He like cross-trained from some other job. And he was like 10 years older than me. He was like, oh my God, what do we do? Like, you know, completely devastated. I had been used to doing it. I was doing the job for a few years by then, so I was like, I don't think it's really anything to worry about right now. And our commander had to come in and address us. There was going to be something legally done if we had ended up doing something like that. And there was going to be punishments if we would have killed a child, but there was definitely always that stigma of what if you happen to kill a child by accident, your life is over. And as you know it at least. And it was as easy as having someone say, we didn't do it, they did it, to blame each other. And in the military, you're supposed to watch out for your wingmen or your battle buddies or whatever the other branches do. But one of the things that really sticks out about that is that like not only is there the possible collateral damage that could result, but there's also the blame game and the intimidation that the military and the officers have on the enlisted in situations like that. So when something like that does happen, there's a lot of confusion, and that really tears people up. It tears units apart. So it's a whole other war going on within the unit, stabbing each other in the back. It's very dog eat dog, and that just lends to even more confusion with the drone program.
I'll talk about Blackwater. I got to meet Blackwater while I was in Baghdad, and at this point, I had never heard of them before. I had never heard of them in the news or anything, so I didn't know anything about them. I just thought, it was like, oh cool, you guys have better weapons than us, and you get paid 10 times as much as we do. You don't have to do stupid details or anything. So I would just sit around and bullshit with them. They would just tell stories and stuff and show us their better weapons that they had. We released a bunch of people that day because there was no evidence on, and that's what you're supposed to do with people with no evidence, you release them. So, and they were all pissed off about it, and they're like, oh, that's why, when we find people like that, there would just be 10 bodies laying in a ditch or something if we would have been the ones to find them. And that's the kind of stuff that our tax dollars pay for. I also saw multiple people in my unit get help and get put on antipsychotic all kinds of drugs that probably shouldn't even be driving a car with. And then they would just put them behind a machine gun and send them out the gate on missions. I'd see them walking around like high as shit, like zombies or something. You'd be like, your weapon's over there, or something, like just losing all of their things, just trying to hang on to all of their personal belongings, and then getting put behind a machine gun and sent out the gate.
Another thing about asking for help, especially in the career field that I was in with Intel. A lot of times when you ask for help, you'd either just be told, shut up, there's no one that can talk to you anyway. You have too high of a security clearance. You can't get into specific details about your mission. You can't get treatment. You can't even get diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. In order for me to receive treatment when I got out of the military for post-traumatic stress disorder, I had to write to a congressman and actually wait for several months. It took me a year after I got out to actually be able to talk to someone about everything that I had seen, everything that I had dealt with. And not many people would go to that kind of struggle and do that footwork to actually get help. So a lot of these people, especially when you're in, if you ask for help, you're either told, shut up, people are going through way worse, or you ask for help, you go to a psychiatrist and they say, well, I have these pills that you can take that you won't have nightmares anymore. You can just take them to sleep, you won't have any nightmares anymore. And they'll just give you the pills. They love giving, or ibuprofen, I guess. But a lot of times when you ask for help, you'll also lose your security clearance. You won't be able to do your job. So I read an article recently written by someone at Langley Air Force Base, which I was actually there for a little while, training whenever I was in, training some people and some stuff. And when you ask for help, they were saying in the article that when you ask for help, they have therapists with security clearance. They have chaplains that you can talk to, and they have people walking around that will help you. Unless that's something that's occurred in the past like 2 weeks, I wouldn't necessarily believe that. Because I know people who have asked for help, and they're not with us anymore because they couldn't get help. And the only way they knew help was to take their own lives. So things like that. Asking for help. Something as simple as just saying, hey, I need to talk to someone. They make it so difficult that it's barely worth it in the long run. You'll lose your security clearance, which means you won't be able to do your job. You'll be stuck on like something like KP. You'll be sweeping sidewalks for officers to walk on until you missed a spot. You'll be cleaning and basically being treated like you just got out of basic training. So if you ask for help in this career field, unless you fight really hard, you're probably not going to get any. And if you do, they'll find a way to punish you. They'll say, well, you don't need help because you're an alcoholic. That's your problem. But you have to look at the point. So that person didn't drink very well before they were in the military, and they only started drinking a ton after they were doing these missions where they killed people all the time. So it's definitely a crisis, which I'm sure a lot of you are very familiar with knowing about post-traumatic stress disorder, how active duty troops don't get the treatment they deserve, especially when we're just in full-on warfare with half the world right now. If they make the decision that one of us has PTSD or something, they'll say, well, you can't deploy. Well, that's not okay because everyone has to deploy. So it's one of those things where we can ask for help all we want, but a lot of times we'll just get punished for it in their little ways that they like to punish people.
I didn't seek help while I was in the military, but it took me about 3 years till after I got out. I got out in 2007 until everything really started kind of falling apart. I've got PTSD. I've lost a few jobs over it. I stopped going to school because of it. And I finally, my paperwork and everything went through, and it took about 2 years. And I really have to thank Bill Perry. He's a good friend of mine in the anti-war movement. He's a Vietnam vet. He's helped out probably hundreds of people. If it wasn't for him, it probably would have taken even longer. I might still be waiting for a deal or something, and they would have just denied it. So he helped me out a lot, and it still took 2 years. And it's because of that I'm a huge supporter of Bradley Manning. Ever since the first day I found out about it, I was a supporter of him. I was like, yeah, awesome. I wanted to do something like that while I was in Iraq, show people what was going on, but I had no access to anything. I didn't have a security clearance. I didn't even really see paperwork most of the time. It was just a PFC, and they just tell you, like, go do this, go do that, so I didn't really know what to do. just counting down the days till I got out. I had a calendar that I would like mark how many days left in the Army. I'd be like, oh, I have 432 days left until I'm a free man again. All I have written down, except guy on bike. He was just one of many people. Like, dude riding a bicycle too close to our convoy. I'd have like my lieutenant screaming at me like, "He's too close to our convoy! Like, shoot that guy! Don't let him into our convoy!" And I would just be like, look at him like he was crazy or something. Like, if you want to start shooting at people, you can like climb up into the machine gunner's hatch if you want. I'm not gonna do it, and you know that just gets half the people in your unit to call you faggot and pussy for not shooting at people on bicycles. Did you have anything else written down? You guys want to do?
I'm guessing a lot of you that know anything about drones probably know that they kill more civilians than bad guys. That's kind of a common thing. This is just a little thing that I read today that was pretty interesting to me, that President Obama, you know, the guy who's getting in the wars, has authorized attacks on places in Pakistan which have killed more than 800 civilians, and they've only killed 22 supposed Al-Qaeda people. I found that on Google research, and that's really interesting that that would be in the news, because you would think that people would be like, oh, these are so good, they're killing the bad guys. And a lot of people will say that oh, the drones are good, they're killing the bad guys. But I guess one thing that it would be good to be with is knowing that you can't always, obviously, that's what most of you can't always believe what your government's telling you about what is actually happening in war, who they're killing, who they're going after. These are people with lives just like you and I. Yeah, they might wear different clothes, they might speak a different language, and they don't have the choice to be part of this war. And they are simply doing what they need to survive. And having seen that firsthand, having seen those people struggling to survive and seeing their lives torn apart by this occupation that has just absolutely destroyed them, it makes you want to ask, especially for me in Afghanistan. I flew a lot of missions in Afghanistan, and having seen that, it makes you wonder what our government and the people in charge, these generals and these politicians, what their value is on human life, how they can dehumanize these people so much and then have our poor and our youth go and fight their wars for them. It's definitely something to consider, and I just ask if you know anybody that's considering doing this, please have them talk to me or him or somebody, because it's not something anyone should ever have to deal with. And it's very real.
I'll say a little more about the interrogation facility. I feel like I should clarify. The vast majority of the people that we took in there, we found no evidence and we would just release them. Very few of them actually did anything and would get moved up to like a real prison or anything. So it was just, it seemed like if a bomb would go off, they would just grab everyone and then just throw them in the cell. I know one day we had the entire Samara soccer team in our jail cell just because a bomb had gone off like while they were practicing. So we had everybody from like the little water boy who was like a young teenager up to like the old man that was helping run the team, like both sides, like the guys still in their goalie jerseys and everything. So I'd say probably like 98, 99% of the people that went through that place got released and didn't really do anything. a lot of times it just seemed like they were just hoping for intel, like if we fuck with people enough, maybe we'll rat on somebody. There really wasn't a whole lot of strategy to it.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you.
So I was thinking we would do like a brief Q&A and then take a break. And then if folks want to hear more music later, I'll play more music. If folks just want to talk and some of that, we'll do that either way. But yeah, so if you all have any questions, hands up and I'll start with you and then we'll go 1, 2, 3, and
I know Bloomberg is keen to
try to speak up so much.
Sure. I know that Bloomberg is keen to have surveillance drone operation in New York City. Is this reliable as you say these cameras are? How would they be used for surveillance on the phone?
Well, I can't get into too much on capabilities, but I am very strongly against that. I'm completely opposed to using them. Not only because of their faulty equipment, but because also that's a huge invasion of privacy. When we were in the Middle East doing it, as we still are, one of the biggest things is that you can see everything everyone's doing. I mean, there's always limitations on equipment and everything, but one of the things with that is that I'm assuming, and I'm not super aware of what drones they would be using because there's so many different kinds. A lot of them, you can't tell who you're going after sometimes, and if they were to use them in a city, such as he wants to, they wouldn't be reliable. They would be also a huge waste of money. It would be an invasion of people's privacy, and I think that Americans are very, very smart to be terrified of drones being used in our country. I think that that having used them, having worked with them in other countries, I consider it enough of an insult to other people, any human being, to use something like that that's a complete invasion of privacy, but let alone in our own country. The land of the free, how are you free if someone's watching every single thing you do? So I feel like that could end very badly if they did use that equipment.
What are your personal opinions on like the mainstream media, military glorifying being a soldier in these wars, and what is your opinion on them going to high schools and colleges and recruiting kids who haven't had an opportunity to form an opinion yet?
Sure. I mean, I'm pretty against it. I protested a few times in Philadelphia at the Army Experience Center, which is a recruiting center / video arcade, where it's nothing but like Call of Duty and Medal of Honor video games, right next to a skate park. And they have like 13-year-old kids come in and tell them like, this is what the Army's like. And what really shocked me when I got down there was the guys they had running the place, the officers, like none of them even had combat patches, which is it's the patch that you have underneath the flag that means that like you're deployed. So they have these guys down there who've never even deployed, like showing these kids video games and telling them that this is what the Army's like. Yeah, I think the whole thing really sucks. Obviously, it worked on me when I was a high school kid. I don't know how you counter that other than just like talking to kids. Whenever I would meet kids at HAC at the local college that were considering joining, I would give them copies of Winter Soldier, or like try to talk them out of it. I don't know how you deal with it on a massive scale. It seems like kind of up against a lot.
When I was joining, I joined, I was very patriotic, and I also like just wanted to like get the hell to where I was living and do something, see the world, but by that they actually just mean you're going to see things, and not in the good way. And a lot of times what I try to do is I'm very strongly against that, of any kind of recruitment in any type of school. I've actually gone up to recruiters a lot of time and apologized because I feel sorry for them that they have to do that because they're being told to do that. And a lot of times they don't want to be there. A lot of times the people that are forced into these positions to recruit are given financial rewards and that type of stuff. They get promoted more quickly if they recruit a certain amount of people. I remember when my recruiter got me to do Intel because it's such an unpopular job and you have to be relatively smart with your ASVAB test and everything, the test that you do to be able to join to see where you were placed in the careers that are available. He had a meeting and all the recruiters went in and they said their numbers and everything. Like he got someone in one-on-one, which was my career field, and they had a cowbell that they would ring to celebrate if they did good, and he did good, so he got to ring the cowbell. And he didn't know what my job was because he's not allowed to because of the whole security thing, but he was Air Force, so Air Force is cushy enough most of the times it is. I just got really unlucky / lucky to get a really horrible job in the Air Force. And he was, a lot of times these recruiters, they don't have any combat experience. They've never killed someone. And a lot of times when, I don't know what to do on, honestly, I don't know how to solve the recruiting thing on such a huge scale, but I do know that whenever I talk to people that are thinking about joining the military, I oftentimes ask them and tell them what my dad told me when I told him I was going to join it. My dad said, make sure you remember that you're in the military, your job is to fight wars and kill people. And of course, because I was 18 years old, that just went over my head. I was like, no, it's not. It means I'm going to travel and see things and have money. And because Obama said that the war was going to be over. And so a lot of times what I will tell people is, what do you think you could kill another human being? If you don't think and you don't know that you would be willing to kill another human being, and you don't know if you could live with yourself if you did that, don't join the military, because you can join as someone that hands out towels at the gym and bam, next thing you know, somehow you're in a situation where you're going to be killing people. And when I joined, I was told I'd be looking at pictures. I wasn't told that I'd be working with bombs and killing other human beings. I mean, I was informed that I would be looking at pictures and looking at maps. And maybe back during the Cold War, yeah, that was legit, that's what we did. But no, and now here I am. I can't even count how many people I've had a part of. And it's not something to be proud of, but it's something that can speak to kids that are thinking about something. And I try to talk to them about what other options are, what other things are available to you if we want to travel, if we want to go to school. There's always a better option than joining up for a cause that no one really knows why you're doing it and killing these nameless people on the other side of the world.
And to go off of what Heather just said, to elaborate a little more, because the idea of fighting people, I think, appeals to a lot of young people. It appealed to me, like I wanted to go fight and see combat and stuff. But in my head, I thought I was going to be fighting against combatants. Like I thought I was going to be going up against people with machine guns, like shooting at me. And, I mean, there were people who tried to kill us, like they'd blow stuff up, or they'd launch mortars, or shoot rockets or something, or use sniper rifles. But they're usually, you never see them, and they're very, very far away. I don't think a lot of people realize most of the combat you're going to be involved in is going to be dealing with a lot of unarmed people, a lot of civilians who are just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Maybe they're standing around and a bomb goes off, so then everybody starts shooting or something.
You mentioned the drone program, the results of the drone program, the percent of kills that was 300 civilians.
Can you speak up a little?
So like 23 combatants. I'm assuming that from what I understand the drone program, most of the civilian deaths are resulting from the CIA's drone programs in Yemen and Pakistan. That the Air Force itself does not actually run any kill missions outside of Afghanistan and Iraq.
I can't necessarily confirm or deny that, but I can say that the Air Force, we do follow rules of engagement. When I was in, I mean, I'm sure we still do, we try to follow them as closely as possible. They're always being rewritten for us, so I can safely say that I'm pretty positive that the Air Force in itself and all the uniformed people have a that's just because we actually have something that we do follow. The CIA is so shallow. They're just so off the radar with it that to even think of them using drones like we would do, that we have a program that we follow, we have to. I mean, we can get court-martialed. If you're in the CIA and you decide that you just want to kill a bunch of people, what can they do? You're in the CIA. So I'm positive, just out of experience, that I'm sure that they have much more collateral damage than we do.
As far as I know, I don't know if you can confirm or deny this, the uniformed services are not actually taking part in drone strikes outside of the actual countries which are on the ground in war. For instance, we are not officially at war in Pakistan, so any drone strikes that take place there will be carried out by the intelligence services rather than the uniformed services.
Yeah, I can't.
Would it have been helpful for you when you were close in the service to have had some kind of counseling or talking by individuals who would have given you a perspective on how to find the CO status even though you had enlisted?
Yes.
Would kind of how we get here.
Yeah.
But at some point I did take some training to do that.
I think, yeah, that is, I actually was looking into filing as a CO. And I didn't get very far when I was in, because I said something to a staff sergeant that I worked with, who was one of my supervisors, and I said, what if I wanted to file as a CO, because this is really hard on me. I'm having a really hard time with this. And he said, well, you file as a CO during a time of war, you end up like Manning. You disappear. That was the threat that you got. So when I was in, I did investigate it, and I came up at dead ends pretty much everywhere I looked. I think that if there was an outreach to active duty troops that said this is how you can become a CO, that you won't get punished, you won't be sent to jail, you won't be charged with dereliction of duty, then that would be really something that could change a lot. I mean, if you have training in that, I think we should exchange
It's
it.
very critical, and if there are people out here who have that training,
Yeah.
it's just a matter of finding a way to get to people.
Yeah, I think there could definitely be more of an effort on veterans' parts. I mean, I would be willing to try to work with something like that as well, find those people, because I could have used something like that. I was in a very dark place for a long time when I was in the military, and very dark times, and if I would have known that I could have gotten out and ended it sooner, a lot of my life would have been different. So knowing that I'm not the only person who's felt like that, I think that kind of would really help a lot of people. Thank you for.
Well, see what I can do about the others.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a little different experience with that. Well, like I was in an infantry battalion, so that wasn't really anything that anybody would have thought of. If you would have tried to go through the chain of command, they would have just looked at you and probably called you a faggot or a pussy and told you to get out of their office or man the fuck up, as they would say. Or,
Well, it would have to be actually the chain of command, for sure.
right.
Okay, well, what I would say, think about is, the number you said, 22 out of, 800 people, I mean, that's staggering. I'm just running the math over in my head. I'm getting somewhere between 2 and 3%. Now, 2 and 3%, let's just say outside the military, that's not acceptable result in any kind of job, in any kind of school even. Now, and there's a lot of good things to be taken away from what you guys said, but I mean, that stat right there, I think any average caring person should be appalled by that. I mean, 2 to 3% of the people you're trying to kill, and you're killing, I mean, the whole thing's here. I think a lot of people really need to know that.
I think we should tell them. The only way people are going to know about it is if
It's the media only tells us what they want, what everyone wants to hear. It's like this too. I mean, about calling people faggot and not caring about lives of children. That's not what we portray on our they're trying to make wherever they're helping them, wherever they're trying to make them free. That's just not the case. They get called towel heads, sand anchors, hotchies, every word in the book. And it's like first person over there
Oh, maybe, one second.